everyone, and welcome back to Liz Sews. Today I thought I'd get started and working on the construction of my Tiana inspired bra. So I've prepared my foam cut pieces, so I'm using the Black Beauty bra as my base, and I've just prepared my cut pieces as I normally would with foam. So I butted the two pieces together, sewed them with zigzag stitch. I'm going to start working on the cups first, and this is the only thing that I've cut out of fabric so far, because once I get this sort of like ombre cup constructed, and then I can sort of play around and audition some fabrics and figure out what it is I'm going to do for the rest of the bra, whether or not I'm going to do a tulle bridge and cradle, or if I'm going to bring in that silk and maybe bring the silk up into the cups with the power bar. I'm not quite sure, so I'm just going to focus on the cups for first. I got out all of my tulle. Originally I was thinking I wanted to start with, I was going to do white and then ivory and then start getting into the greens, but I think that leaves too many pale pieces. So I think I'm actually going to start with the ivory tulle and leave the white out. So for the ivory one, I actually wanted to go ahead and finish the upper edge of my cup. So I'm going to start by sewing the ivory tulle onto the back of my cup and then flip it around to the front. So I want to go ahead and have 2 layers of ivory. So I'll fold this in half. So it's 2 layers. Because the foam is sort of like my limiting fabric, I'm not worrying about direction of stretch on my tulle at all. So normally when I'm working with tulle, I would place it perpendicular to each other so that it would be a really stable fabric, but because I'm using this as my limiter, then the tulle is more for decoration than anything else. So I want to make sure that I have enough that it covers the whole cup. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so I am going to sew the tulle onto the, let's think about this. So the part of the cup that I want against my body, so the finished edge, that's what I'm going to sew the tulle to. And I'm going to sew it along this straight edge here so that it then can flip around to the outside. So I'm going to take this over to my machine and sew it along this straight edge with a straight stitch, probably about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so now I have the tulle sewn on along the upper edge here. So as I had mentioned in the plans video, this is not a technique that I came up with, so you're happy. Came up with this bra, and she has a couple videos, and I'll see if I can link them up in the cards over there if you want to see some more in-depth tutorial. But I thought it was a really good finish, so I thought I would try it. So now that the tulle has been sewn to the inside, then we can flip it out to the outside of the bra, and then you get that sort of nice folded finish up on the top. I don't have to worry about finishing it in any other way. So I think we're just going to work on one cup at a time now. And I'm going to start by pinning this into place around the edges. Because the tulle is flat and the cup is curved, I am going to have to do some pleats and gathers to sort of get things sitting nicely. So let's see if I can ease it around most of these curves. And you can see I didn't like cut the tulle to the exact amount. I wanted to make sure I had enough to cover the cup, and then I can trim away any excess later. Decided to go ahead and get my tailor's ham just because it'll give me sort of a round shape to work with when I'm pinning things on. So now that we've done our first one, I think the next lightest one I have is Sage Mint. And this one came from the TaylorMade shop. Now I know in Sew Your Happy's bra, she had them all meet at the bridge quarter and sort of like fan out from there. But I don't particularly like that look because it sort of makes it look like a frowny face, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to have them all meet, I think I'm going to have them all meet up here and then have it fan out towards the bridge. So just like we did with the ivory, I'm going to fold this in half and make sure that I have enough to cover the whole cup and sort of pin it into place. Now this is looking really pale. I might do 3 layers with this one. I think this is the only one where I felt like I might need more than 2 layers of it. Okay, so pressed it just to make it a little bit easier to handle. And I think I am going to connect it right at that upper edge there. And I think I'm just sort of eyeballing it for now to see what I think looks good, and I think that works for me. Okay, so now I have a general idea of where my tool needs to be cut. Now, of course, I went digging through my stash and I actually found another green tool that I didn't show in the planning video that I thought I would go ahead and use. And this one is Pistachio from Emerald Erin. So we're going to start seeing a theme here. I'm going to fold it in half. Let me press this in place and then pin it up at my arm corner, diagonaling it down to where I think it looks nice, and then pinning everything into place again. Okay, so pistachio is put on. I went ahead and did a line of stitching just around the wire line of the cup, just because all of the pins were getting in the way. So I thought, this is like halfway through. I think I have I've done 3 colors and I have 3 more to go. So lime, matcha, and olive. So I just thought that halfway point was a good time to just sort of secure that in place. And I've done it just in the seam allowance of there, just so that I had less pins to sort of deal with. So next up is going to be lime. I went back and forth on whether or not I was going to use lime, just because it's a little bit vibrant compared to the rest of them that I'm using, but I think it's okay. So of course, as I'm moving down the cup, I need less and less tool to be able to cover it, which is kind of nice. This means I'll have a lot of leftover tool once this is all said and done, but having extra green tool in my stash is not a bad thing.
One eternity later.
Okay, so I have the last color pinned into place, so I am going to go ahead and stitch this back again with the machine just around that wire line edge. One thing I sort of learned while I was going is that it made it much easier to pin it from the back like this. That way I wasn't trying to like dig out the pins from in between the layers of tulle. And it'll also make it easier when I'm sewing it into place. So I'm just going to again sew along this edge to attach all of that tulle along the wire line, and then I can remove all the pins and trim away the excess and see what we have. Okay, sewn along that wire line edge. So now I can remove all of these pins. I think that looks really, really cool. So I'm just going to trim off all of my excess fabric now. And we have that. I'm leaving this underarm section for now. The way that I've cut my foam, I definitely want to attach my underarm elastic on here and then fold it to the inside so that it covers up the foam and reduces bulk there. So that's why I'm leaving that excess there for now. But I really like how this looks. I think it looks really cool. Such a neat design. So I know from watching her videos, I think she said it took her like 12 minutes or 9 minutes per cup. It took me a lot longer than that. But I really think that the design is excellent. excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second cup and then sort of to decide where I'm going to go from here. Okay, so 2 cups done. I am overjoyed with how this turned out. I did make sure as I was doing the second cup to use my seam gauge to make sure that I was moving down the colors at a same pace on either of the cups so that they will, look sort of matched up once it's put into the bra. So now I kind of need to decide what the rest of the bra is going to look like. So my first option is I have this silk. And I was thinking that like the bra would sit into the silk like this, and then I could do the power bar and the silk as well. So the power bar will come up this side and sort of like scoop around. So that's option 1. And I quite like how that looked. I do think that the olive is a little too dark. Obviously on her dress, she does have those dark sort of tendrils, which is why I wanted to pull the olive in, but it feels a little like heavy and weighty in the cup sitting like that. So that is option 1 with the silk. The second option would be to set it into some more bra tulle for like a much more sheer look. So I think the bra tulle I have the most left over is matcha. So if I did matcha, it would look like this. I don't know, that doesn't seem as Tiana to me. I think I like this silk better. Yeah. So now I can go ahead and cut out the rest of the bra knowing what fabrics I want to do it in. So I'm going to do silk for the bridge and the cradle and a power bar, my nude for the backband piece, and then I have to figure out elastics. Okay, so all of the silk has been cut out and I really like how it looks, so I'm glad I went with this choice. So typically I don't like using wovens in bra making, especially woven like this where it unravels really easily. And the reason why is because we always have these like 1/4 inch seam allowances and there's tension on all the seams, and so you're much more likely to get the seam to just like shred and blow out completely. So the best thing to do if you really want to use a woven is to go ahead and back it with a stable non-stretch knit. So I'm going to be using sheer cup lining. That way I'm hoping that this takes up all of the load, sort of the work of the tension on the seams, and this one will not unravel and pull out. So as long as this one is in there, sort of like backing it, using it sort of like an interlining, but basically just a lining. But as long as you have that stable knit behind it, hopefully that seam will stay strong enough and not unravel. So everywhere that I have silk, I've also cut out in sheer cup lining just to strengthen it and hope that it helps with the seams. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew all of this guy together. So my cradle to my frame and drop the cups in. I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and then I have to look at elastics. I'm probably going to dye elastics. I have 2 sort of options that I'm thinking of, either pistachio or ivory. So I'm going to sew this all up, and then I'm going to dye both of those colors, and then we'll come back and look tomorrow and see which color I think looks best with the bra. So I lied a little bit. I didn't put the cups in yet because I want to go ahead and dye my backband pieces as well. And so they have to be dyed and inserted in before I can drop the cups in, because otherwise I won't be able to get a nice clean edge on the side. So all I've done is just attach these 3 pieces together using sort of that stitch and flip method, so it's nice and clean on the inside. And then of course on the inside here, all I have is that sheer cup lining. And then I've also gone ahead and done my power bars and attached them to the cup. So I did 1 layer of silk and 1 layer of sheer cup lining. I sewed them along the arc there and then understitch and then attached them on. And now typically with the Black Beauty bra, you do a little tacking stitch over on the side of the strap to keep it in place, but I didn't want that showing from the outside, so I've actually tacked it, but I like opened up my power bar and then tacked it into place so that you won't see the stitching from the outside. So the outside looks like a clean line, but you can see sort of there and on this guy here where that stitching is, and that's just done through the lining and the seam allowance itself, and then the fashion fabric can fold back around on top of it and give you a nice clean edge without any of that stitching showing. So I'm really liking how this is turning out. So next step is dyeing elastics. I wish I had some examples of those colors so I could just figure out which color I wanted and dye that one, but I don't. So I'm going to dye up both and then audition them. Okay, so I decided to dye just strap elastics, see how it looks, and then whichever one I like, then I can go back and dye the rest of the elastics. So the first option I have is 488 Ivory, and this is a Dharma acid dye. Dharma makes the dyes that I like to use the most often. So this is what the ivory one looks like. It's okay. It's contrasty, but it still like works with it, but it's not the best option. I really like option number 2, which is 434 Pistachio, again from Dharma Acid or Dharma Trading Company. And I think the pistachio looks almost perfect with the silk. Like it's a pretty darn close match. I don't think I could have picked a closer one. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with this pistachio just because it blends in with all of that silk really well and will tie everything together. So now I'm going to go ahead and dye up my power net, my underband elastic, my underarm elastic, my hook and eyes, and my channeling in this pistachio color. So I did go ahead and use ammonium sulfate as a leveling agent with this just because the pistachio color is one of their advanced dyes, so it's like pre-metallized. So the ammonium sulfate makes the dye strike a little bit slower, and so you get an more even coloration on it instead of breaking. So I'm going to go ahead and do that when I dye up all the rest of mine as well, and hopefully I'll get something that looks pretty consistent with the strap material. And once I have that, I can start assembling everything together. So I'm making a little bit of progress since the last time that I checked in. I had to go ahead, well, okay, so first off, I put my back band piece in here and stitched it down and did the stitch and flip so it looks all nice and clean. I went ahead and did a zigzag stitch just along the bottom edge here because it was seeing a lot of unraveling from the silk, and I just wanted to make sure that I'm not losing any more fabric to the unraveling. So hopefully that keeps it in place while I can get the rest of the things done before I can go ahead and finish that off with my elastic. Obviously I've slid my cups into the frame there, and I've got that all sewn into place, and so it's really starting to come together in terms of look. And then on the inside, I also zigzag stitched around the edge of my foam here just to, again, keep it from unraveling any further because I am connecting some silk there, and then also just to sort of thin it out so when I put my underwire channeling, it's not as bulky. So now I can start putting elastics in. I'm going to do underwire channeling and then the bottom band and then the underarm, straps, all that stuff. So I've made a lot of progress, but before I popped the wires in, I wanted to go ahead and show you this here. You can see here where I'd let all of that tulle be longer than the cut and sew foam. So the reason why is that I sew the elastic to the tulle itself, and then the fabric and elastic can sort of like wrap around and cover the edge of the foam. So it's really quite thick here. We're looking at, let's see, 15 layers of fabric in there, not counting the foam. So I definitely wanted to minimize the amount of bulk that I could in this section as much as I could. So not doubling over the foam greatly, significantly reduces the bulk in this underarm section. So I mean, I still have 15 layers of fabric, but at least I don't have foam doubled over on itself. But yeah, so far it's looking quite good and I'm really excited about it. So I'm just going to pop these wires in, and then I can do the second pass of that underarm elastic. I always really love putting the wires in because I feel like it's when the bra starts taking shape, has like a definitive form, and you start seeing the cup shape. Yeah, that's looking quite good. So it's finished, and I am really excited with how it turned out. I think it's gorgeous. And I know when I was looking at my sketches, I wasn't entirely confident that it embodied Tiana, but I think it does. I don't know if it's just because I've been looking at it a really long time and I really like it, but I think it does for me enough that I can feel confident in it. So if you look at the original Tiana dress, of course she has that sort of green overlay that is the skirt, and then I like how this sort of echoes the petals in her bodice top where it has that sort of like ombre effect. I think it worked really well. And I like how it like pulled in all of these different color greens too. So now that the top is finished, so that's what it looks like from the front. And then, you know, from the inside, everything's nice and cleaned and tucked away. Most of it is just that pistachio color. So I'm really excited with how that pistachio color turned out. I think it looks great with the silk. So for the bottoms, I think I'm still planning on doing tap pants. So I'm thinking I might do a second pair of bottoms to go along with the tap pants. So you could either wear the tap pants or the other one. And what I'm thinking is a more high-waisted bikini style bottom, which is always my favorite go-to choice when it comes to bottoms. And then maybe doing a center tummy panel in the silk, and then the rest of it using a stretch satin that I dye in pistachio, since I know the pistachio goes really well with the silk. So I think that might be nice to have two different options on the bottom. But I am pretty thrilled with how this bra turned out. I think it's fantasy. It's definitely a lot more time consuming than I normally put into my bras, and I've used a lot more materials and a lot different materials that I normally work with. So I definitely succeeded in sort of stretching myself and pushing myself outside of my boundaries. So I'm happy with the Disney Founding in the Bedroom series. I hope you guys are too. And I will see everyone next time when I start tackling the bottoms of Tiana. Take care.